Hey folks, before we begin today's show, I want to thank our awesome sponsors. The first is Idle Academy. Idle is the first and only authorized vocational school for instructional design and online learning. It includes a comprehensive hands-on curriculum with certifications, credentials, expert coaches, mentors, a community of practice, paid experience opportunities, industry-preferred software access, live events, and ongoing updates. Your entire instructional design career is neatly packaged behind a single login. Check out all the details at www.idlecourses.com/academy, and you can use my code Luke for $88 off the yearly membership. And folks, one more announcement. The next cohort, the 6th cohort of Instructional Design Institute, is going to be kicking off again on Monday, October 28th. If you have not heard about this yet before, this is our program to cover the fundamentals of instructional design. We cover different types of topics such as andragogy, analysis, backward design, universal design for learning, generative AI, have to cover that nowadays, as well as evaluation methods and creating different types of portfolios. We go through things every single week with live sessions. You'll be getting my feedback every single week on your assignments with lots of hands-on activities where you are going to be learning about essentially everything when it comes to being able to design a type of a meaningful, relevant, and interesting form of learning experience. If this is something that you want to be able to take part in for joining other different types of learning nerds such as yourself, well then, hey, you should apply to the next cohort. Go down below inside of the show notes. Can't wait to see you there. Okay, let's bring on the introduction music and let's start the show. Hello, learning nerds, and welcome on in to the nerdiest podcast you're going to hear today. I'm your host. My name is Dr. Luke Hobson. I'm an assistant director of instructional design, an instructor, an author, blogger, and podcaster. And my purpose is to be able to help you along your instructional design journey. Wherever you are at, all are welcome on into this show. And of course, you can find all the resources that I have for you over at drlukehobson.com. Somehow, it has become a part of my job to pay attention to the latest advancements with generative AI. This is largely in part due to working at MIT, and many of the new courses and programs that my team has been developing and designing revolves around generative AI topics. You would think that the super nerd school is going to be talking about nerd things like AI, and for that, you are absolutely right. So with this in mind, it has made me extremely jaded. Not the best way of describing it, probably jaded by every new tool that keeps on coming about, because every single time that something new is entering into this generative AI space, which feels like every 30 seconds, there is a brand new thing. And of course, this new thing is going to be the best of the best. It is going to be the thing that revolutionizes everything, and it's going to change our world for the better, is what every single new tool is essentially promising. And because of hearing so many pitches and reading so many things, there is a type of internal filtering system inside of my head that is just absolutely filled with skepticism and not really believing that something is truly going to make a difference. There, of course, have been a few tools that have come out that made me say, wow, we should be paying attention to this, because for either good or bad, this might really change the way that we go about, especially within the instructional design space, higher education, online learning. These are all things that I'm very passionate about. And as you can probably guess, ChatGPT was definitely one of them where it's like, whoa, this is different. This is the real marking point where all of us are now going to become incredibly familiar with what this is. And sure enough, a couple of years later, I say ChatGPT, you know exactly what I'm talking about. A couple of years ago, if we go back to 2022, maybe not as much. And for today, I want to be able to talk about another tool that really I would consider to be mind-blowing. And why do I say that? Well, this actually happened when a bunch of you reached out to me about said new tool, which is usually my first sign of like, I should probably look into this more because it's not just one or two of you that have been pinging me, it's quite a few. So that's what today's episode is all about. Now, some of you might already have an educated guess as to what tool I am talking about because I shared about it recently with a screen capture that I posted on LinkedIn about Google's new NotebookLM. And this, indeed, in my opinion, is something that we really should be paying attention to. Now, if you haven't heard about what this is before, NotebookLM, it's an experimental AI-powered tool designed to help users understand complex information more efficiently. Think of it as a virtual research assistant that can summarize facts, explain complex ideas, and brainstorm new connections based on the sources that you provide. Now, one key word inside of that definition, by the way, which I asked Gemini to be able to give me that definition because that is essentially Google's version of ChatGPT is Gemini, and I wanted to be able to really take it for what exactly it gave to me. Right now, this is all still experimental. And a thing about those types of classifications of experimental, we will see them kind of come and go. Sometimes they're here to stay, and based around user feedback, people now say like, okay, this is the tool we're going to be using, so therefore they put more attention, more dollars to this, more people power into the tool, and therefore it's going to be a permanent fix. Now, over times, an experimental tool will kind of come and go. It misses the mark, and because of that, it gets pushed off to the side. But I think this one is going to be here to stay. So here's how this tool works. 3 steps. Number 1, you simply upload your relevant documents, such as research papers, articles, notes, anything of a sort. Second step is that NotebookLM will then analyze your sources and provide summaries, explanations, and answers to your questions. And then the last step is that you're going to be able to discover new connections, ideas, and perspectives based on the information in your sources. Now, I experimented with a few articles to see what NotebookLM produced, and it was helpful, but GPT-4 still seems similar to me. What I was really curious about was that one feature in particular. NotebookLM can generate a podcast episode based on what you upload. Now, I know what you are thinking. Great, some clunky, robot-sounding thing is going to read my article back to me. Why is this important, Luke? Well, the thing is, not so fast, my friend, is that it's a podcast with 2 hosts, a male voice and a female sounding voice, and they banter back and forth about your material, kind of like an actual podcast. NotebookLM even adds in breaths before they speak to make it sound more believable, more human-like. Who thought about that at Google, by the way? I am like, why did someone think of that? But somebody did, and it's funny because if you listen to enough podcasts, you will hear that in some places, some podcasters will actually remove the breath. You'll hear me actually do that sometimes throughout this episode just because it makes it sound more fluid, that you're not just listening to me breathe all the time. And for the major podcasts out there, they eliminate breath completely. But to make it sound believable and human, it's inside of there. So anyway, for today's podcast episode, I want you to listen to this. I just want you to listen to a sample about what this is actually like and what it really does sound like. Because from some of you who obviously listened to the video that I posted on LinkedIn, your comments clearly resonated. They shared that as far as for saying that, like, this is mind-blowing, this is scary, like this is different. And there's obviously some people who did not listen to it and just immediately said that, like, blah, this is nothing. It's like, I don't think you really listened to it. I just think you're dismissing it. So let's give this a fair shot, shall we? So what you're going to be listening to is a article around, it was a chapter, actually. It was a chapter for a book that I submitted to that was about AI and instructional design. Now, NotebookLM mistakenly thought that I am creating a new book on artificial intelligence and instructional design, and it calls it AI ID. You're going to hear that in like the first couple of seconds. And it does and refer to that a couple of times about my new book that's coming out or something like that. But once again, I don't have a new book about AI that's coming out. This is only a chapter. It's essentially like an article that I wrote. And inside of here, I talk about generative AI and use cases for the instructional design space. And I mention about scenario-based learning, creating simulations, chatbots, personalized learning paths, role-playing, and even analyzing feedback. I also speak a bit about the challenges of AI and the drawbacks as well. So what you're going to be hearing are these two generated podcast hosts banter about this article, essentially as in they read it and they are now trying to be able to do a summary and a debrief and to share their thoughts. So let's listen in to our new AI friends and hear them discuss about the impact of AI on instructional design. And then I'm going to be coming right back to share some thoughts. So here they are.
6th grade, I was writing a paper on ancient Egypt, and I swear I lived at the library. Then a friend told me about Ask Jeeves, and suddenly answers appeared like magic. These days, it feels like AI is giving everyone those same Ask Jeeves vibes. Exciting, a bit mysterious, maybe not as revolutionary as we think, though.
It's like the metaverse all over again. Suddenly everyone's talking about it. But those of us familiar with virtual worlds, we're already living it in Second Life. Instructional design has this way of hyping up every shiny new thing.
Right. Virtual reality, gamification, microlearning.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. We're not about to tell you AI is the be-all and end-all solution for instructional designers. In this deep dive, we're going beyond the buzz to unpack a chapter from MIT expert Luke Hobson's upcoming book, AI ID.
We'll break down exactly what AI is, the opportunities and challenges it presents for learning, and how instructional designers can apply these powerful tools thoughtfully. Think of this as your guide to cutting through the hype and getting down to practical applications.
So before we get ahead of ourselves, let's define AI. When we say AI, what are we actually talking about?
At its core, AI is about enabling machines to perform tasks that typically require human intelligence. We're talking problem solving, learning from data, even understanding natural language. On a technical level, it involves creating algorithms, essentially sets of rules that allow computers to mimic human cognitive processes.
Okay, so we're teaching machines to think, but not necessarily in the same way our brains do. More like giving them the tools to analyze information and make decisions based on what they learn.
Exactly. One key aspect of this is machine learning, a subset of AI where algorithms actually improve over time by processing and learning from data. They identify patterns, make predictions, and become more accurate the more data they're fed.
This is where things clicked for me. I'll admit, I was hesitant about AI at first, but then I tried using ChatGPT to help me draft learning objectives for a graduate course. And it was like having a brainstorming partner, bouncing ideas back and forth.
That's a perfect illustration of how AI can be a powerful tool for instructional designers. It's not about replacing us, but augmenting our abilities, helping us work smarter. Like Luke Hobson mentions in his book, it's a Kickstarter for ideas, but it still requires the human touch to truly shine.
Speaking of shining, Hobson's chapter is full of examples of how AI is already being used in instructional design. One that caught my eye was using AI to develop realistic training scenarios. He talks about this case study, revitalizing organizational culture at Tech Fusion Corp.
That case study is a great example of how AI can add depth and nuance to scenarios. It's like having a team of writers helping you flesh out every detail, creating a much richer learning experience for participants.
In the Tech Fusion example, AI crafted this whole narrative around a company struggling with low morale and disengagement. It outlined specific leadership approaches to address the problem, like listening tours and cultural ambassadors, and even projected positive outcomes based on those strategies. It's incredibly detailed and really brings the scenario to life.
That level of realism is crucial for effective learning. When we can immerse learners in authentic scenarios, they're far more likely to connect with the material and retain the information.
Absolutely. And Hobson doesn't stop at scenarios. He talks about using GPT-4, a really powerful AI model, to create a simulation for aspiring instructional designers who are prepping for job interviews. Imagine if every professional could have access to that kind of realistic practice.
The possibilities with AI-powered simulations are incredibly exciting. This example in particular highlights how AI can democratize learning, making these immersive, often expensive experiences accessible to a wider audience.
He even used AI to brainstorm different breakout room activities for a workshop on adult learning.
I bet it generated some creative ideas. It's easy to fall back on the same old activities, but AI can push us to think outside the box, offering fresh perspectives and challenging our assumptions.
It really can. He talks about how helpful it was to use AI-generated suggestions for incorporating role-playing into a negotiation skills course.
Role playing is such a powerful tool for active learning, but creating those scripts can be time consuming. AI can generate a solid starting point, which we can then refine and customize to align with specific learning objectives.
So far, we've got scenarios, simulations, brainstorming, role-playing.
Hmm.
Is there anything AI can't do? It's like the Swiss Army knife of instructional design.
Well, it can even help us repurpose transcripts, which are often overlooked but incredibly valuable resources.
I mean, those things we typically just create for accessibility? Tell me more.
Exactly. Transcripts are a goldmine of information. AI can help us extract key themes, generate discussion prompts for deeper engagement, and even create glossaries and knowledge checks to reinforce learning.
Wow, I never thought of it that way. Transcripts become dynamic learning assets, not just static documents.
Right. And we can go even further. AI can analyze learner data from various sources, identify patterns, and even personalize the learning journey in ways we could only dream of before.
Okay, so let's say we have all this data about how learners interact with our content, how long they spend on each module, their quiz scores, which activities they engage with most. What happens then?
AI can process and analyze that data much faster and more efficiently than humans. It can identify struggling learners early on, highlight areas where the instruction might not be effective, and suggest personalized learning paths to address individual needs.
That's amazing. We're talking about a whole new level of personalized learning, all powered by AI. It's like having a personal tutor for every single learner.
It is. But before we get too carried away, we need to acknowledge the potential challenges of using AI in instructional design. It's not all sunshine and roses.
You're right. Hobson talks about some of these challenges in his chapter. What are some of the big ones we need to be aware of?
Well, one of the biggest is the question of human oversight. Just because we can automate certain tasks doesn't mean we can just set it and forget it.
Right. We still need human instructional designers to make sure the technology is used effectively and ethically, and perhaps most importantly, to provide context and build those all-important human connections with learners.
Exactly. Finding that balance between AI's capabilities and the irreplaceable human element of learning is crucial. We'll dive deeper into that in the next part of our deep dive.
We'll be back after a quick break to do just that. We're back and ready to keep going with AI and that human element in learning. Finding that balance you were talking about. How do we do that?
It really is fascinating. We've always had this one size fits all approach to learning, you know? And now with AI, there's the potential to personalize things in ways we couldn't have imagined before.
It's a big shift from that old factory model of education, that's for sure. More customized, more adaptable. But how do we design for that?
That's the $1 million question. It really makes us rethink the entire design process. Instead of that fixed curriculum, we need to be designing these flexible learning ecosystems that can change and adapt to individual needs, individual goals.
Now you're speaking my language.
Yeah.
But what's that actually look like, an adaptive learning ecosystem?
So imagine a platform, right? And the AI is constantly monitoring the learner's progress, analyzing everything, how they interact, assessments, the feedback they give. And based on all that data, the system starts suggesting personalized activities, resources, even adjusting how fast or slow they go through it, even the difficulty level.
So instead of waiting till the end of a module to realize someone's struggling, we can adjust things immediately.
Exactly. And it's not just about catching people up either. Let's say a learner is doing really well, excelling. AI can identify that too and give them more challenging material or opportunities to dive deeper. Creating that dynamic learning experience, always meeting the learner right where they are.
That's incredible. It's like a personal guide for navigating the world of knowledge.
I like that analogy. And it gets even more interesting. What if these adaptive learning ecosystems could also connect learners, facilitate collaboration and knowledge sharing?
So instead of everyone being in their own little personalized bubble, AI could connect them with others who have similar interests or learning styles, even similar goals.
Exactly. Think about the possibilities for mentorship. Connecting a learner with someone more experienced or even an expert in that field.
Now that's really something. We're talking about personalizing not just the learning experience, but the whole learning network. But let's be realistic for a moment. How achievable is all of this? Are we talking about some distant future, or is this something we could actually see happening soon?
That is the question, isn't it? The reality is we're already seeing pieces of it. Platforms like Duolingo, Khan Academy, they're already using AI to personalize learning pathways, give customized feedback.
Right. And those chatbot tutors we talked about are getting more advanced all the time.
Exactly. As AI technology keeps evolving, we can expect even more impressive applications. But of course, we need to acknowledge the challenges that come with all this, especially with the personalization and data analysis side of things.
What kind of roadblocks should we be aware of as we move forward with AI and instructional design?
Well, the biggest one is probably the sheer amount of data we're talking about. To create these truly adaptive systems, we need a lot of data. Tracking, analyzing every single learner interaction, assessment, every piece of feedback. And we need to do all of that while respecting privacy and ensuring security.
Data privacy is such a huge concern these days. Learners need to know their information is being handled responsibly.
Absolutely. And it's not just about collecting the data, it's making sense of it all. We need AI algorithms that can actually analyze these massive amounts of information and translate that into useful insights to guide our design decisions.
So we can't just throw AI at the problem and expect it to magically work. We still need to be thoughtful about how we're using it, make sure it aligns with what we're trying to achieve pedagogically.
Precisely. And that brings up another point. We need a new kind of instructional designer, people who are experts in learning theory, pedagogy, but also comfortable with data. They need to understand what AI can do, what it can't do.
A hybrid skill set, blending that art of teaching with the science of data and technology.
Exactly. And those designers are going to be in high demand, especially as AI starts to reshape the field.
It's exciting and a bit daunting at the same time, don't you think?
It is, but I'm optimistic. I think the potential for learners is huge.
Me too. But before we get too lost in thinking about the future, let's ground this a bit. What are some concrete things designers can do today to start using AI in their work?
Some really practical steps. It's a great question. Like I said, start small, think about those examples from the book, and don't be afraid to just dive in.
Okay, start small. What would that actually look like, though, for someone who's maybe just starting to explore AI in their work?
Well, you mentioned ChatGPT earlier. That's a great place to start. Or even Google Bard, something like that. They can be really helpful for brainstorming, especially if you're feeling stuck. Like, try generating some dialogue for a role-playing activity.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, or you could even have AI help you analyze learner feedback.
It's like having an extra brain in the room, right?
Yeah.
One that can process information so much faster than we can.
Exactly. And the thing is, these tools are constantly learning and improving. The more you use them, the more you figure out what they can do. It's a learning process for both of you, the AI and the designer.
I love that. So it's not just us teaching the machines. We need to be open to learning from them, too.
Yeah, absolutely. And that brings up another important point. We need to prioritize our own professional development in this area.
Right, because things are changing so fast.
Exactly. And there are so many great resources out there now, online courses, webinars, conferences, all focused on AI and education.
So don't be intimidated by that learning curve.
No, embrace it. This field is constantly changing. We've got to be willing to learn and adapt right along with it.
It's like we're all students again, in a way,
Yeah.
exploring this new frontier together, which makes me think collaboration is going to be more important than ever, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. Talk to your colleagues, share what you're learning, what's working, what's not. Go to conferences, join online communities. The more we all share, the better prepared we'll be as a field.
I love that. Collaboration over competition, especially when it comes to something like AI, with so much potential to change things.
I agree. At the end of the day, it's all about creating the best learning experiences we can. And if that means embracing new tools and new ways of thinking, well, then that's what we need to do.
It's so easy to get caught up in all the excitement or even the anxiety around AI. But as instructional designers, we've got to stay focused on using these technologies in a way that's thoughtful, ethical, always putting the learner first.
Finding that balance,
Yeah.
making the most of what AI can do, but never losing sight of that human element that makes learning truly meaningful.
Well said. It's been such a fascinating conversation. Thanks for joining me today to dive into the world of AI and instructional design. And for our listeners, if you have any thoughts, experiences, or even questions about AI, please share them with us. Until next time.
Well, welcome on back. I promise I'm me, and this is not robotic Luke, by the way. So, what's your initial reaction? Are you surprised, alarmed, confused? turned off by the whole thing? Did you hate it? I mean, it's odd. And I listened to about 4 of these AI generated podcast episodes, and each one of them had their own quirks. There are definitely moments when you can tell it's not human. The tone doesn't quite match the level of enthusiasm where you would expect the voice to go up because someone is interested and it's full of enthusiasm. But instead, it's kind of like, and instead of being excited, it almost goes down, which does the opposite, which normally means like you were not interested and you're fading away from the conversation. I also saw too that there were a few breaks in speech that seemed like out of place at times. You were kind of wondering like what happened, like why is there a pause? Is this seemingly in the middle of a sentence and it kind of just appears out of nowhere? The honest thing that I experience with this, though, is that after a while, you forget it's AI. And I would love to not say that sentence. But I noticed this where I was listening to so many of these in one day that I kind of forgot about it at some point in time. I'm going to blame this on Zoom, actually, because glitches happen all the time when we're on Zoom calls, and sometimes someone's Wi-Fi is going to be going in and out, and it will make that person sound robotic, or it will lag, or they're going to have static or other pause problems or things like that. And you just kind of now associate that with the way that we communicate with people. So is it really that unbelievable as far as for that happening in a podcast? No, that can absolutely happen. Another quirk is that the male voice went in and out of first and third person with the material, which was really odd. If you listened in the beginning, it sounded like he was taking the position of actually talking as me, because he was saying about how it was back in his 6th grade experience and it was his friend who introduced him to Ask Jeeves. And obviously, he is not the author. So he refers to himself as being the instructional designer, kind of going in and out of first person and third person at times. And that was a little bit odd to be able to try to listen to and still follow along with. Another glitch in the Matrix was the content NotebookLM added to my content. For instance, when describing about learning pathways, I do describe how it's valuable to place students together by cohort and even by mini cohorts to match their interests. So if you are trying to become an instructional designer, and let's say that you want to be an ID, that's kind of like the first cohort. But then let's say that your mini cohort would be the fact that you want to become an ID in higher ed. You could then be grouped with the other IDs in higher education to form those stronger bonds and to be able to talk more about similar interests. But when you were listening to them banter, one of the things that they referred to in there was learning styles. Why? AI loves learning styles. Always has. I'm afraid to say it always will be, unfortunately. It just always brings about learning styles. But I did not say learning styles anywhere in that article, and I kind of just added into the mix. Now, I heard the same thing from a friend of mine who also used this recently. He is a professor and he is a weather scientist. His experience is studying lightning, which is, that's a pretty darn cool field to be studying. And he mentioned that NotebookLM added in several inaccurate statements about his research. Now, it did just take from the abstract of his article. It didn't have the full article, which makes me believe that if it did have access into more information, then obviously it would be more correct by pulling from that data. But just by reading the abstract, it didn't do that great of a job. So therefore, I'm going to assume that this is going to happen more in the future with inaccuracy and these different types of pieces of misinformation. This has always been a problem with LLMs. By the way, it's not like I'm saying anything new to you. And while it certainly has become much, much better over the last couple of years, especially with access to more data and being able to have access to the internet and other different types of sources, still things can happen, and it does not mean that everything is going to be accurate. So let's talk a bit about the pros, the cons, and what's next. For the pros, this is an unbelievable study tool. I have a million white papers that are saved on my laptop that are to be read later, and guess who is never going to read them later? Well, yeah, guilty as charged. So in theory, could I upload a white paper and have AI create a podcast for me on this research? As someone who loves to learn by listening to educational podcasts, this is right up my alley. And since you're listening to a podcast, I bet you would love this too. And I have tried this with a few samples, and I can absolutely see this being a new, legitimate way for us to be able to stay on top of current trends and issues, because listening to a podcast is so much easier to consume information compared to sitting down and trying to be able to read a paper. There are, of course, other features within NotebookLM that I am heavily glossing over, by the way, with the note capabilities, with coding efforts, with collaboration tools. There's a lot more this tool can really do at the end of the day. But the whole idea of the podcast generator, as someone who is a podcast host, absolutely perked my ears. I had to go be able to listen to what the heck is this thing all about. And once again, since I am assuming you love to be able to listen to podcasts too, give it a try. It's interesting. It's really interesting. Now, with the happy things out of the way, let's talk about the cons. By far, the quality is still not there yet. With all the reasons that I mentioned about a minute ago, I don't see all of us now loving just listening to AI-only generated content. For some of you, I'm sure you found it extremely hard to listen to, and you did not enjoy that segment of this podcast episode at all. Maybe it's really, really not for you. As a podcaster, I'm certainly not going to complain about that, by the way. I will always think that human podcasters are going to be better than generated AI podcasters, but it's, once again, something we need to be mindful of. The misinformation is absolutely there as well, which is not great. It's something that I always worry about. It's something that we should all be worried about for certainly going forwards in the future, just because of how it seems so believable and people take things at face value all the time. And therefore, you can understand how that is actually a slippery slope. There was a study that was conducted by researchers out of Wharton, MIT, and Harvard, and they did this actually with Boston Consulting Group. And to make a very long story short, what the researchers found at the end of the study was that a majority of the folks who were using LLMs essentially took whatever ChatGPT gave to them and essentially thought that it was perfect and that they were just going to be using this for going forwards. And the more that this happened, the more that our types of skills that we identify with as humans, for our critical thinking skills, for our decision-making abilities, those clearly took a back seat. And instead, we took things at face value and said, this is what I need. I can use this for going forwards. This, of course, brings up the concept of de-skilling. What instructional designers out there, what do? We help people upskill. So where could things potentially go? Unfortunately, yeah, we need to talk about de-skilling, because now people really aren't using their brains, and instead they're essentially relying on the AI to be able to do things for them. More research keeps on coming about with this, and as you can probably guess, I am staying very tuned into what this new research has been finding about. But this is something that, as you can probably expect, really is expected, I guess is probably the best way of saying it. The more and more that we keep on seeing generations use technologies in different types of ways, and in someone who is a millennial, I am terrified of what Gen Alpha will be learning and growing up with. This could be a whole different way, a whole different ball game for trying to be able to find information. So I really hope that we do put this emphasis on being able to use our brains to filter through with information and trying to be able to learn right from wrong. Now, another fear with all of this, if it hasn't already happened yet so far, which maybe it will by the time this podcast episode comes out, is that there is going to 100% be a flood of AI-generated podcast content. In 2023, we saw this when the public had access to ChatGPT, and all of a sudden, Amazon was flooded with new books being co-authored with ChatGPT. Other publications had to shut down submissions because of the overwhelming amount of Gen AI produced material, and they simply could not review them all. Will this happen to podcasts? Oh yeah, I'm sure it's going to. I just wanted to give you a sample so that way you could stay informed and educated about this new piece of technology. But I would not doubt it if people begin to blast out whole new ways of different types of podcasts about literally everything. And we're going to have to figure out, was this actually made by humans, or is this another type of an AI produced material? And last but not least is this whole what's next? Where are we going? The thing is, folks, is that this technology is only going to improve. Remember when Siri came out and everyone was shocked that we could now talk to AI with simple commands? And of course, it never worked. Siri still doesn't work for me. I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but I can't get the darn thing to work. But now we can actually have what sounds like human-like voices talk about our content and do an incredible job of even pronouncing names and places and other things. Ooh, this is really kicking up here. And it's not like we need to look very far where ChatGPT's new voice feature sounds, once again, like I'm talking to a human being inside of my iPhone. It is pretty darn crazy, and it's only going to grow from there. So once again, be sure to be mindful of what you're listening to. Follow through with information. Make sure that you are indeed double checking, looking for sources, trying to be able to have conversations with people to make sure that you are not losing those human skills. We really need those, certainly now more than ever in the future, to be able to have these. And of course, on the bright side, when all the podcasts become generated by AI, I promise you I'm not going anywhere because I like this a little bit too much. So at least you're going to have one podcast that's still going to remain human at the end of the day or in our near future. But that, folks, is what I wanted to be able to share with you with Google's new NotebookLM. You can go down below inside of the show notes to be able to try this for yourself. Of course, I would love to hear what you think. Pros, cons, future. Share with me. Go on LinkedIn, and you can then comment on the post that's attached to this. And I'd love to hear what you have to say because I can't stop talking about this. This is just so wild. So please feel free to go down below and to share away. Of course, if you enjoyed this podcast episode, and even if this kind of terrified you, but if you enjoyed it no matter what and you feel like you'll learn something, please be sure to review the show and to give it a 5-star rating wherever you are listening. Once again, if you want to be able to learn more about instructional design with me and fellow learning nerds, the next cohort for Instructional Design Institute, where we're going to be launching the next Fundamentals of Instructional Design course, is going to be launching on October 28th. Be sure to get your applications in. If you do, you will then be hearing from me afterwards and talking about next steps. And that, my friends, is all I have for you today. Stay nerdy out there, and I'll talk to you next time.